the Summer 13 group, and just happy to be here and helping out.
Awesome. Awesome. And next up we actually have Andrew.
Hi there, everyone. It's Andy Fawcett. Yeah, I'm from the Spring 13 group, Force.com MVP, and yeah, happy to be joining on this rather rainy and windy night in the UK.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, Mr. Greenhaw.
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Bill Greenhaw, Summer 13 MVP.
Marty.
Hi, everyone. Marty Chang, consultant with Solemn Consulting, Winter 14 MVP. Nice to be on the call.
Awesome. And then Sarah.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Deutsch, and I am a Winter 14 brand new MVP. Happy to be here.
And even though I can't see him on the web meeting, Josh Hoskins is gracing us with his presence. Josh?
Hey guys, Joshua Hoskins. I'm also a consultant at Aperio, actually based in the UK. So I am enjoying the rainy nights with Andy.
Whereabouts are you, Josh? Hopefully not down south.
I'm in central London, Notting Hill.
Okay. Very nice.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you guys joining from across the pond there and helping out today. So with that said, let's go ahead and we can have some questions. So like I said, you can either raise your hand, speak up, or type in the chat. So who wants to go first?
Don't be shy, everybody. I'm sure.
Hi, my name is Chris Utley. I have a question.
Hey, Chris. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a configuration question, and Adam's sort of given me some insight, but I'm hoping to get a confirmation. I have two objects, a parent and a child, in a master detail relationship. And when I change the status on my parent, I want to update a field on all my children. Is there any configuration solution for that whatsoever, or does it have to be done through a trigger?
Any of the MVPs want to take that?
So you essentially want to bubble downwards a field change on your master down to your children?
Yes.
I don't know of any declarative solution to that personally. There's plenty of ways of bubbling upwards, of course, with formula fields and things.
Yes.
But yes, you're going to need to update all your children, and that's going to require Apex, is my perspective on that. Though I am personally keen to see what the new flow via triggers brings us, because of course with visual flow you can use declarative sort of style point and click to create a visual flow to do this type of thing. Salesforce are piloting in Spring 14 the capability of attaching one of those flows to a trigger event, so or a workflow event to be more specific. So that that type of functionality may start to open up some of these common things which often require just small triggers to write in a more declarative way. But as things stand right now, aside from that pilot, I'm not aware of anything.
Chris, do you need to update this field? Does the user need to have the ability to update this field on the child object, or does it just need to be?
Well, the only reason I want to update a field on the child is so I can trigger some workflows against the children. Ultimately, I want to send an email off to to an email field that's on the each child record, to say, hey, your attendance has been accepted. So that's my ultimate goal. Also, if I can at least get a field to be updated on each child, then that can trigger my workflows to send off some emails.
Yeah, that's very key that you mentioned that, because in a lot of ways you can argue, which is why it's important to understand the use case. You could argue that if all of the records and the child records are going to be the same, then why don't you just inherently write a formula field to get the value for the parent record? So it's a great use case. The one other thing I'd add, which you always have to be mindful of when writing triggers to flow downwards, is to make sure that your trigger that goes downwards doesn't violate any validation rules, right? So normally because in a lot of cases you do have the need to do something like this if they can be different at any time. But in your case, what I've done for some customers is I've created a field that's on the child record, and it's called date time stamp. And so the trigger will actually populate the current date time stamp with the current date and time of that field. And so inside of my trigger, I make sure I always populate that field, as well as update the record that I'm trying, or the attribute that I'm trying to update. And then inside of my validation rules, for all of the rules that would be on that object, I would say, don't run if the date and time field is equal to now, to make sure that you can still have validation rules. Because what a lot of people will do is they'll write a trigger to go downward, but then they'll also put a validation rule on that same object, which will break the trigger essentially. So that's one design consideration to figure out when you do write the trigger.
Okay. And one extension to my question. Sorry?
Just an extra question for me. What user action is invoking this? Are they pressing a button on your parent record, or?
Well, it's a status change. Yes, in fact, I've coded it as a button. So the button, all it does is it changes the status. But I want that to ripple down to the children.
Have you? And when you say you've coded that as a button, is that with Apex, or you've used JavaScript, or?
JavaScript just to flip the status field and update it. Yep.
I'm wondering if you can use Visual Flow.
Well,
you can invoke that from a button.
That was my next question. I was looking at Visual Flow yesterday, but Visual Flow couldn't read a list of children. It only seems to deal with one single object.
Right. That is the correct.
I didn't see anything in there that says read a list of children and update each child. Is that true?
Yep. Yeah, that's the current functionality today. Going forward, though, what you could do is you could write a class or a simple line of code to basically loop through those records and update it, and that method in that class could actually be called by what they call a headless flow. I'm sure there's a better name for it now. So that it wouldn't necessarily have to live in the trigger layer. It could actually be a function that's called and triggered by workflow.
And that's coming in Spring 14 or not yet?
Spring 14 pilot.
Okay.
Pilot.
Yeah. So safe harbor that.
And that's pretty advanced. It's a little bit beyond the average administrator.
I think it'd be the same thing as running a trigger.
Yeah. Well, I think from what I gather and looking through the metadata API, they're going to basically, when you create a workflow, you get to say the items in the workflow, so a field update or a different activity. They'll have another option in that drop-down that says invoke a flow. So you'll be able to just create your flow and then connect the flow with an existing workflow.
Oh, nice.
So that's how they're going to do it. So I think when we get into the detail of it, there might be some good best guidelines and best practices around what you can really do in there, because I imagine there's certain things that you could do to get things in a bit of a pickle. But it's something I've got on the pilot for. I want to dig a bit more deeply into, so watch out for some blog entries and tweets from me on that, and I'll keep people posted as to what it actually can and can't do. But they have added a bit more query functionality. I'm going to do a bit more digging on whether or not we can query multiple records, because there is a bit more query functionality that's been added in the last few releases.
Okay, I think you've helped me, and I did find some sample code for a trigger that updates the child based on a field change on the parent. So I've only written one trigger in my life, so I think I'm going to copy that code and see if I can play with it in my sandbox and see if I can get it to work.
Now, don't forget Stack Exchange if you get stuck. Plenty of people on there help you to help.
Okay, good. Thanks for all your help, everyone.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, who's next?
Hi, this is Tom Barrett. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
On the Spring 14 release, they make mention of an option, enable other users' dashboards. And I can't seem to find it. My colleague cannot find it. And I did some searching on the web, and other people are not able to find that. Are we just all missing it, or is this something that maybe will come out they missed in the spring release and they're going to come out with a fix or something? It's on page 182. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I saw a discussion about that on Success Community Collaboration, and they were. I'm looking for it now. They were pinging the what I believe was the project manager to the thread, and I'm just looking to see if that got answered. But there's been a lot of so I'll look for that. If anybody else on the call has specific information or has seen that feature, speak up.
Yeah, I think it's a great feature. Just like to find it.
Yeah.
I would say that
we can move on to the next one unless somebody else has something to contribute on this question.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is, you could always post that question. I mean, we'll look for you and post it on MVP office hours if we can find it. But it's also a wider question for some of the release community groups that are on the success.salesforce.com. There's a Spring 14 release group, and most of the product managers are paying attention to that. So if we can find it, we'll let you know. If not, there are a couple of chatter groups in the community that would probably yield that answer as well.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking. It's in the. I'm sorry. Tell me your name again. Are you David Reese?
It's Tom.
No, Tom. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Tom. We'll look for it and get back to you.
Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if I'm on mute.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was in the Success forums, and it seems like everyone's asking that. I didn't see any solution, explicit, answer.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I found a thread that I saw, and there's no response from the PM yet. So.
Okay.
But I'll post a link to that thread in the MVP office hours group so you can find it and follow it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, looks like Katie Stoll has a question. Katie, do you want to just say your question for the group, or I can repeat it?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This actually just came up this week, so I don't have a whole lot of details, but currently today we have Service Cloud enabled and our orders come in as cases, and a lot of them are attached as PDFs onto the case. For some legal reasons and financial reasons within the company, we have to print all orders and scan them into a separate system or program that houses all those. Is there a way that instead of having to manually print and scan and do all that extra work that we could export these PDFs attached to cases and mass load them then into this other system?
Ooh.
That's a great question. I'll take a stab at it. This is Joshua. The answer to that question is yes. If you actually use the Apex data loader, there is a way to export attachments, and they'll actually come in their raw file format as what they're uploaded. But it's directly from the attachments object, which I think is the same object that your case would be uploading to. The only thing is that you need to write what we call a SOQL query that will select the attachments that are associated to the case types that you want to export.
Okay.
But with Apex Data Loader, if you were to go in and do a a select star or select star on attachments, or you can't do star, but if you select ID from the attachment object and just do like limit 10 or limit 100, you actually will get not only a CSV file with those rows, but you'll actually get those files that are associated with it as well.
Okay.
Does that function produce the actual file name as well, or are you getting the the ID?
That's a great question. So in the CSV file, you will have the file name because it's stored in the database, but the file that you actually get will actually be named the Salesforce ID. So you have to use the CSV file to translate, what file you should be picking up. But all of the information is available in the CSV, and obviously you have the attachments there as well.
And this is Bill Green. I was actually just looking on AppExchange right now. If you want to look, there's a free product from Salesforce Labs called File Exporter. That's a command line for Windows that you could run or have scheduled that will look to kind of export the attachments and do the CSV file as well.
Great, thank you.
Right. Who's next? Or else we'll start picking on people.
I've got a question, if it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's Bruno from Toronto. My question is, I've got a set of records, and I guess I'd like them locked, but not just the main record, the child records in a master detail relationship. So sort of like an invoice has been paid, now I don't want the line items to be adjusted. So I'm thinking of using record types to do that, and then have read-only layouts and whatnot. But my question is, when I click the box on the master object, and I want those to be set, is the only way to do that via a trigger? To sort of set the record types to read-only?
Any MEPs? I think it's similar to that last, or their first question with the child object. I believe that is going to be the case, especially when because it's getting updated on the parent. It's going to take a trigger. The other way to do it that I've done before, and I did this on opportunity line items, is just a validation rule that essentially doesn't allow changes on the line items. So you could potentially do that.
I've tried that one, and I noticed it works for creation and updates, but not for deletions. I think you can still delete though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what did I do for deletions?
That's an interesting question, though. That's pretty cool.
I wish workflow applied to delete, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know what I've seen other people do, though? I've seen them actually take the native delete button off of the layout itself, and then put a sort of a fake delete button or a custom delete button, and then use some JavaScript to be able to check to see if it meets the needs using JavaScript. If it doesn't, then move forward, or if not, you can perform another action. But that's JavaScript behind a custom delete button. So essentially, you're doing the same thing. But I don't know if you joined late, Bruno, but did you hear the other conversation we had about the updating the child records?
You know what? I'm so sorry I didn't. I called in, and then I got a client call, so I put it on mute, and I grabbed it for 10 minutes. So I must have just missed that. My apologies to the group.
No problem. So I'll just recap it for you. So essentially, you do need to trigger to go downwards. The case is, like in your case, the gentleman was trying to trigger workflow off of the children records. So of course that would be a good way to trigger workflow. But in your case, obviously, when you go downward and you cascade all your records, you're updating them with the same value, which makes a lot of sense for the validation rule, as Jared mentioned, because it's just going to be the easiest way, and then you obviously have to do the exception for it. So you could, in a config way, with the validation rule and a custom button, implement, what you're trying to implement. The only thing that you would have to run to from a design pattern per se is if you're going downstream, you have to make sure that you also exclude that automation from running those validation rules. A lot of people will create a trigger and they'll have it cascade downwards, but what will happen is they'll create a validation rule, and the trigger will run into a validation rule, which essentially breaks the process. So anytime you cascade downwards, you have to build a solution to be able to exclude the records from that validation rule when you're running the trigger. But configuration-wise, I think you have a better option.
That's great.
Something else
to
potentially try that, and I would have to test it out, is creating a roll-up summary field on the parent object that counted the number of line items on there, and then writing a validation rule against that field to make sure that the previous, basically the value doesn't change when it's in a certain status. So, basically saying, hey, it doesn't, the prior value isn't different than the current value. And checking that.
That is a good point, actually. That does work, actually. I did read that in the docs of the day for the delete use case, surprisingly. It is a way of stopping that happening, putting that validation rule at the header. That's a really good suggestion.
Oh, fantastic. So you have that when you try to delete the child record, it can compare up against the parent value, the roll-up?
Yeah, exactly. Because what it's going to do is, because that roll-up is going to update the parent value, and that validation rule sits there, and so naturally it's going to fire that validation and not allow the deletion to happen.
I like that solution. Thanks so much. I'm going to try that.
Yeah, I think that's what I did when I set up that stuff, so I think that should work, yeah.
Well, appreciate all the good answers. Thanks, MVPs.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can apply that to your update case as well. If you've got something that sort of, you modify values on your child that affects a roll-up, maybe a filtered roll-up or something, anything that fails on the master will stop the children being updated. So you can get inventive to stop updates as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, who's next? Start calling on people. All right, I'm going to pick some people out. Alex Friedman, is that right? You just hanging out, listening in, or is there anything we can help you with?
If you're calling me, that doesn't necessarily mean I have to answer. I'm just listening and learning. I'm picking up stuff. Actually, my compatriot Tom Barrett asked the question that we were struggling with earlier this week. But
okay, perfect.
They're very interesting, good techniques that I'll put in my tool chest for safekeeping that we're discussing.
Awesome. Let's see here. Jen Kinsel? Did I say that right?
You did.
Do you have a question or just listening in?
No, I generally just like to listen in, and it helps me come up with creative solutions sometimes, but I don't have anything right now.
Cool.
Thanks.
It looks like we have Melissa. You have a question?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. I was curious about email to case. If we wanted to start off a flow from where a form is entered on a new case by our team internally, and then we wanted to route that case to a team that's not in Salesforce. We wanted it to go in an email to an email address, and then we want it to be related so that when they reply to all, that link, that it's going back to that case. Is that something that I haven't worked a lot with cases, and I'm not sure if that is something that's pretty standard.
Any of the MVPs want to take that one? Or I guess I should say anybody with email to case experience.
Yeah, so this is Josh. I'll take a stab at it. So email to case. So let me just give you a verbal receipt. So when you want to basically send an email alert out to a group of folks, some people who are outside of Salesforce, and when they reply to that message, you want what to happen again?
I want that email to be attached back to that case that form case that was started, so that it's associated.
I see. So okay, so I think what you're asking for is available out of the box. So when you enable email to case, as long as you put what they call tracking IDs, you can either put them in the subject line or in the body. When that email comes back into Salesforce, it will look for those tags, and it will associate the email to the whatever case they got the email on. And those reference tags are available in the merge fields when you're working with an email template.
Oh, great. Is that kind of like the detail link that I would use on other objects?
It's available in that same menu, but it's called like reference ID or something like that. It's a unique identifier. Reference ID.
Yep. Reference ID?
Yeah.
Right, and as long as I have that in the email that goes out, then it knows to associate back to that case.
Yeah, that's correct. There might be one configuration box that you may have to check, but it's very easy to find in the email to case area.
Okay, and that's the same area where I would say, like if we have them type in the word completed in the subject, then we could have it close the case and things like that.
That would be in the workflow area, I would be presumed, but this one is more along the lines of email to case. But just try adding it in first, and then if you have any trouble, just go to the help and type in case email or case reference ID, and you'll be able to find an article. Case reference ID.
I just posted an article to it in the chat, Josh.
Oh, great.
So do you want to forward that on?
So I'll post this. Actually, if you don't mind, can you go ahead and post it to the MVP Office Hours chatter group?
Yeah.
And you can go find it. Oh, it's chat. Everyone can see it. Right about that.
Thank you
so
much.
Thanks, James.
Cool.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks. All right, who else has a question? And we're at the halfway mark, so if anybody has any dev questions, definitely throw those out. If you haven't already, we can give those a shot.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. This is Tom Barrick. Since if no one's going to jump in, I'm going to make sure I have tons of questions for you guys because I know you. I hear somebody flicking a pencil in the background, getting a little bored. But this is probably an easy one. From your own experiences, do you find the better approach for test data to be around a test class, building the data there, and calling your methods, or the new feature, which I'm shooting from the hip, I don't remember what it's called because I haven't played with it yet, where you actually have your data in a spreadsheet and you upload it to Salesforce. I'm not exactly sure where to even find it, but I remember it came out in one of the releases. I was wondering, what is the better approach in your own opinion?
I think that feature is the ability to populate test data from a static resource, which could be I think they have it be a CSV file, a spreadsheet, as you say, a spreadsheet. I've not personally used that, mainly because it focuses on just one object at a time. You can't give it a rich data set, which normally your code needs more than one type of record, So I found it interesting, but immediately quite limiting for more complex data setups. So tend to do it in the test. It's also interesting to know that where I can, I tend to avoid using DML at all because the tests run quicker. So I actually maybe construct the record in memory in the test and then pass it to the piece of code that validates it or does whatever processing on it, which isn't always 100% what you want to do, but it can, for certain types of testing, make your test run a lot quicker and it's a bit more efficient. So I use a combination of creating test data that I end up inserting into the database during the test execution, and also an element of creating test data that's effectively not sent to the database but passed directly to the code I'm testing, and then insert the behavior after that. And those form of tests do run a lot quicker than the ones that insert data. But it's not always possible to do that. But yeah, I find the feature to load from static resources too limiting. So I do it in the test.
Thank you very much.
I just have one. This is Marty. I just have one item to add to that. I agree that the load data feature is limiting, and also if you've worked with creating test data for some standard objects and possibly even your own custom objects, there are certain validation rules that prevent you from inserting data exactly at the end state. For example, with contracts, you can't. You have to go through some stages with the test data. You have to load them in kind of like a start state and then update them to get to the like another status that you might have down the road, just because of certain field requirements and out-of-the-box limitations. So one pattern that I use very consistently with implementing code, especially for large organizations, is to create a common what I call like a test database. It's a little bit goes against. It's definitely takes more time for tests to run, but the benefit is you essentially instantiate the database in all your tests. So all you do to set up your test data for every test is just test database db equals new test database, and that gets you all the test data you need. And from there, your database class can have auxiliary methods. So I want to see the changes that happen to a specific opportunity in my test data, and you'll be able to do that by following the pattern. So the idea is you create your test data as a central class in Salesforce, and then you just use that everywhere you need to run a test.
Yeah, this is Joshua. I totally support what Marty is saying about keeping your test data in one test class. It supports a lot of different use cases, because as you move on as an organization, you're going to need to be able to test different processes, and your organization is going to grow, and it's going to get more validation rules, or maybe you change a process. What's important, and I feel this is sort of a weak point inside of Salesforce, is you can have test data and you can have validation rules, but there's going to be that time where people are just, or maybe your organization hasn't implemented sort of a mature release management process, and there will be validation rules that will get created in production but never roll down to a sandbox, and you'll essentially break that. So having it all in a test class and being able to go to one test class to manage your data, to fix it, so that you are also within your test class setting up your data, obeying by the rules that you have implemented, is a great thing, and it is best practice. It's arguable, the whole insert thing that Andy was talking about, but definitely I see a lot of best practice in a test data through a class, and it also can help with a new sandbox. So if you create a new sandbox, you can also have those records actually exist if you want, if you code the method correctly. So inside of a sandbox, if it has no data, you essentially can build your stub data. And I've seen that done correctly with organizations that need to actually populate some records to run some processes in order for the environment to be fully functional.
Yeah, I think test helper methods are definitely something that you want to consider. So I agree with that completely. And I think the only thing I would add, just as a gotcha, is make sure if you do create separate classes that encapsulate your common code for setting up test data as opposed to putting it in your test, then make sure you put the test annotation on those as well, because they will incur code coverage if you don't.
Okay, thank you. You're talking about the @ test symbol?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, annotation. Thank you.
We found a few of those recently and rejoiced around the office while we saw the code coverage go up.
That's awesome. And I was going to say, I think that's only possible if you have a lower version, because I think in the newer versions, it's either a test class or not. Is that still true?
I think you might be right.
Yeah, they might have scuppered us on that one actually. I don't know whether.
Yeah, so if you have a lower version,
you might have to
and
have it as a test class.
Yeah, if you have a lower version, you haven't uploaded the version, you haven't increased the version, then you're fine. But once you get into the more recent versions, the class either it is a test class or it's not. And I'm glad they did that because it makes things a lot easier when searching for culprits.
Cool. All right. Who else has any questions? What about, let's see, what about Reed? Do you have any questions or just kind of listening in? Take that as listening in, which is totally fine. Let's see, and Victor, do you have a question? Or just listening in?
Listening in, thanks.
Cool. Awesome. Well, welcome. Does anybody have any more questions? Anything? If not, we can give people time back in their day.
Cool. I'll take a minute. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Chris Utley here. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
There's an object called Opportunity Product Schedule. At least I think that's the name of the object. It's not accessible in setup, but my business people here want to start tracking schedule dates and schedule quantities against an opportunity product. So there's a feature where you can establish a schedule and define a few parameters, hit the save button, and bang, it comes up with a schedule and quantities, and then you can modify that. But that object is not, I want to add some fields to that object. Is anybody have any thoughts about that particular object? Is it, first of all, can you confirm that it's not accessible through setup? I can't find it anywhere. And anybody have any experience using it? Any concerns with that object using it?
Was it opportunity schedule item? Did you say? Opportunity line item schedule.
It's under the opportunity product window. You can add an established schedule section or button. And this is all out of the box feature. But the object itself doesn't seem to be accessible in setup.
Yeah, this is opening out. Sorry, I'm coming a little late. I was doing something else. But yeah, you can't add additional fields if you enable either the revenue schedule or the
Yeah, mine's a quantity schedule.
Yeah, you could either do revenue or quantity, and unless I'm missing something, I believe that's kind of limited to that.
Anyone have any experience using that? Are there any concerns using it? Because I plan on implementing it within our company.
Do you have the exact object name? I'm looking at the APIs or the standard objects right now.
Opportunity. I think it's line item schedule might be the name.
Yeah, opportunity line item schedule.
So opportunity line item schedule allows you to create, delete. It's got to describe, get deleted. So it doesn't. I don't see an insert here. Oh, I see. Well, the create, I guess.
I think it's just for revenue scheduling, isn't it?
No, I'm using it for quantity scheduling already. I've tested it out. It seems to work well. I just want to know if anybody else has used it.
I've used just the native revenue scheduling, but without trying to, again, because you can't do any customization.
Yeah.
And if anybody on the call wants to check it out in the interface, you go to Customize Products, and then there's a schedule setup, but all you're able to do is just enable.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's extendable for sure.
You can actually define which products you want to enable to have a quantity schedule, which I've done.
Correct.
I've gone through all my products and identified the ones that will have a quantity schedule. Then on the opportunity product window, you can set up the established schedule button and the schedule related list, and it shows up there.
Just out of curiosity, what are the custom fields you were hoping to add to this object?
I haven't thought it through yet. I just had a phone call with my business people this morning. right now it's sort of like an estimated shipping date or delivery date, and I would like to have like an extra date to say when did we actually do it. So we planned on doing it on this date. Here's the actual date that we actually shipped it out. As an example, I haven't thought through what fields, but the object itself doesn't seem to be accessible. So I think I'm out of luck.
I might be very selfish when I ask this question, but I haven't played around in this area. So can you just quickly give it like a 2-second intro of the concept of revenue scheduling? Because I've always wanted to know, and I've never had the opportunity to ask a question. So there's my question.
I can't talk to the revenue side, but on the quantity side,
that's fine.
On the quantity side, we manufacture products, right? And so a customer orders 100 units, but we can't deliver them all on the same date. So we would like to plan our manufacturing schedule around, we want to know how many more we need to manufacture based on how many we've already shipped. So if they've ordered 100 and you want to ship 50 each, or 25 for 4 weeks straight, our business people want to know that, the people that run sort of the warehouse and the manufacturing side.
Cool, that makes sense. I guess revenue would be the same.
And then Josh, this is Bill. On the revenue side, very similar. I'm not shipping all my product, until certain dates. So I'm scheduling my revenue to be recognized over a certain amount of time.
Makes sense. Thanks, guys.
And I didn't want to build a custom object to do all this. I figured it's an out-of-the-box feature, so I may as well use it, and I don't have to worry about, writing any customizations.
Yeah, and again, so it's you can't, I was just looking at the AppExchange. There's something you might want to look at AppExchange called Steps to Cash. So somebody's built, there's some bigger ones if you get into the ERP systems, but this one looks kind of maybe a little bit not as, complete ERP system. That they built their own objects and way to try to do product scheduling and, reports around it and everything.
Yeah, and we're not at that level yet. I just want to have basic functionality.
Yeah, so if it's basic, unfortunately you can't add any extra fields. You could try at the product line item level, but it's, and then maybe you're going to have to maybe do some development around that by having to start in like end date and at the
okay. I think it's a rarely used feature, but at least that's what I'm finding.
It's a feature that hasn't been updated in probably about 6+ years. So.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good idea to put out on the Idea Exchange, though. Definitely. I think.
Well, there is one out there, but it only has 350 votes in 6 years, so I don't think the odds of me getting anything changed there, I think, are pretty slim.
We'll post it out on the MVP Office Hours group just to throw it out there, because there may be more people that just haven't really taken the time to search it or look for it. So,
okay.
Put the hashtag vote early, vote often.
Yeah, Aiden Martin posted it, I guess. Okay, thanks for all your help.
Awesome. Josh, were you going to say something earlier?
Yeah, I was just going to say 2 things to close out. Just some feedback. One, it is awesome to hear the people that are getting value from each other on this call, which is pretty cool. So I've heard a couple instances where 2 people have had the same problem. So that's pretty cool, as well as, MVPs learning the different concepts that are out there as well. So I'm just continually amazed about how this hour call helps people, including the people that want to listen in, who are, putting these things in their treasure chest. So I think that's good and more reason for continuing this thing. The last thing I'll add is I think that for the people that listen, we're going to come up with a fun fact of the week for you to answer that will sort of break up the ice and the white space. So with that, thanks for joining. Keep the community thriving and keep joining and telling your friends, and bring a list of questions to this anytime you have them. I think it's still providing a lot of great value to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely echo that. And I was actually interesting in our Kansas City user group a couple weeks ago. I had one of the people come up to me and just thank me for office hours. And I'm not saying that to float my own boat or anything, but just a thing of like we want your feedback, so definitely post it out there on the group and let us know how if we can improve in any way. So with that, we'll give people time back in your day, in your Valentine's Day. So 10 minutes, and we appreciate everybody's time.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I saw out on the internet an easy way with just a few lines of a Visualforce page that allowed me to put a button on the opportunity view, for example. And when I click it, it allows me to see multiple opportunities and edit those all on the page. And I picked a few fields of choice that I wanted to be editable. And that was really cool. I was excited. Wow, no controller or nothing. I'm getting something easy to throw out to the user, see if they like it. Well, then I discovered that it only shows 20 records per page. So then I figured out how to add a next and a previous button. And then it was all good. And then I got a hiccup, and that is if I make one change on the first page, for example, and don't save and click next, I get an error that says modified rows exist in the records collection, Visualforce exception. Without getting heavy into a controller solution, is there a way to trap that and have it a little bit friendlier message? Because it's a separate screen and it says Visualforce error at the top, and then it says system.visualforce exception : modified rows existing in the records collection. Kind of not friendly, user friendly at all. Is there a way to trap that without controller and inside of Visualforce without a controller?
Would you be happy to have it update the records before it moved to the next page? I think that's what it's wanting you to do. It's wanting you to click the update button, then next page. I'm not sure whether you can combine those actions in one button without using Apex, but I was just curious if that would be your expected behavior. Would you expect the database to be updated as you navigate between pages? Sometimes users don't really like that. So curious if that would be acceptable.
I would think without the user explicitly clicking save that the save shouldn't occur. I haven't. This hasn't even been shown to the user. It's something we're considering to show users to get their feedback. And if it's something that they really like, obviously I can make it more friendly with controller and whatnot.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, it's the standard set controller behavior. It doesn't store the state. It wants you to save that to the database before moving on.
Yeah, this is James. I think you're going to have to go the controller route, but you can still use the standard set controller method, as in the next method on the standard set controller. You can still call that, but you're going to have to build some sort of Apex on top of it to handle the modified
controller extension off of the regular, because it's right now using the standard controller opportunity.
Yep. So you'd use the standard set controller in Visualforce, but you also have an extension there, and then you'd have to set the standard set controller as like a member variable in your extension, and then from there you could call the next method and stuff like that from there.
All right, thank you. I was just hoping there was some magic tag. All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, any other questions before we end it for today? I'll take crickets as a no. Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys, and everyone have an excellent weekend.
All right. Happy Valentine's, everyone. Thanks, Jared.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Please stand by.